Cruise news time, and I've got quite a few stories. 27 cases on the Carnival Vista, and it's been over a month since a federal judge said that the cruise lines operating in Florida, they didn't have to follow the CDC's rules, but yet the CDC is still the cruise boss in Florida. What the heck? Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Lido, Loca. I'm your host, Tony, here with the latest cruise news updates. Well, let's just jump into that CDC story. How about that? I see this in the comments a lot. People are saying, why are the cruise lines still following these rules going out of Florida? Didn't the federal judge say that they didn't have to? You know, CDC's not the boss in Florida anymore. What the heck? So let me answer that question. I think it was the 24th of July when the judge made the ruling that put an injunction against the conditional sale order. And then just 2 days later, all the cruise lines came out and said, you know what? We're fine with the CDC rules. All the cruise lines operating out of Florida have willfully decided to comply and continue to be under the oversight of the CDC. They have said, the CDC, you are still the boss of cruising in Florida. So it's just as simple as that. So if you see a rule come up that you think, the cruise line shouldn't do that, they should just tell the CDC to go take a hike. Well, that's not the route they've chosen. They've chosen to let the CDC continue to have oversight, not only in Florida, but the rest of cruising. I'll tell you why that is a benefit. There is a system out there right now. We talked about it a few days ago. I'll leave a link to that video. And while some of you may shudder at the CDC still being the cruise boss in Florida, well, let me tell you the benefit and maybe why the cruise lines are doing it. The cruise lines and the CDC have worked together to come up with this color-coded system. And I talked about it. I showed you how to use it. I will link that video above. But the color-coded system, cruise ships can be green, they can be orange, they can be yellow, and they can be red. And the only time that the cruise ship's going to get shut down, it's on a cruise ship by cruise ship basis, the only time the cruise ship's going to be shut down is if it is on red. And interestingly enough, green means no COVID cases. But orange and yellow means that there are some COVID cases, and there's a predetermined threshold, and it depends how many cases, and it depends whether it's crew and whether it's passenger. It's really fascinating. Again, go check out the video. There's a link to this color-coded system. But I believe one of the reasons why the cruise lines would want to continue to work with the CDC is because they have this system in place to keep cruising going. If they start working outside of the CDC could probably arbitrarily shut them down. If the cruise line's goal is to get back to cruising, path the least resistance is probably following the CDC guidance. Now let's talk about a cruise ship that is in yellow status. The Carnival Vista operating out of Galveston, Texas. It has garnered a lot of attention this week. We heard unconfirmed reports early in the week that there was possibly 27 cases on board, primarily crew members. And then a couple days ago, that information was verified when the Carnival Vista made port at Belize. They had to submit information to the Belizean government to say what exactly was going on there in the cruise ship. And what they revealed is that they had 26 crew members that had tested positive for COVID and one passenger that had tested positive for COVID. They were asymptomatic. They were all vaccinated. They have been isolated, quarantined, contact tracing has been completed, and no other cases were found. And look, all of the details aren't completely laid out in that Belizean document, but when you hear that it's a big amount of crew members that are asymptomatic, you would have to assume that this was found through regular testing. And so one of the protocols that the cruise lines are doing is they're testing their crew on regular intervals to isolate to find COVID on board. Some people would say, well, that's your problem. If you're testing, you're going to find COVID. I would argue that it's important to find COVID in the crew as soon as possible so that they can do these isolation things. And so I believe that's why you have a big number. And so certainly when you hear there's 27 cases on a cruise ship, you could have one or two reactions. You could have an, oh my, that seems like a lot. What's going on? Or you could say, well, is that within the tolerance? And so I go back to this idea of, I think it's good that the cruise lines are working with the CDC because they've worked together. The CDC determining what the good tolerance is, the cruise line doing the reporting to make sure that they're inside that tolerance. And 27 cases isn't enough to turn a cruise ship red and to stop cruising. And so for me, I find comfort in that. It's been an interesting 16 months. Everybody's trying to figure out where to delegate trust. a lot of people, I'm assuming that most people aren't epidemiologists. I'm assuming that people are not virus experts. And so every one of us are delegating our trust to some source of information, to some expertise, and we have to determine whether or not, we trust our delegation of trust, or we all go out and become epidemiologists, one or the other. But for me, if the cruise lines are working with the CDC, both of those organizations have good reputations of keeping people safe, I will delegate my trust to that process. And so when I hear that there's all these cases on the Vista and I look on the CDC website and it's yellow, not red, it gives me some sort of peace that it's under control. Really an interesting conversation. Who do you delegate your trust to and why? A couple more interesting tidbits coming from the Belizean press release. The statistics are there. 99.98% of the crew vaccinated, 96.5% of the passengers vaccinated. And you will remember the big change last week for Carnival in their health protocols, indoor mask requirement for some areas for all passengers. Crew members have gone to N95 mask. They've shut down the social area for the crew, like where crew can congregate on their off time. And now all passengers, regardless of vaccination status, will have to get a negative test result before they go to embark their cruise. I got my test scheduled for Wednesday for my cruise on the Mardi Gras, 1 week from today. How about that? It's almost cruise day. So certainly that's a big story that's been rumbling over the last few days, and there is no ceasing in the rumbling when it comes to the vaccine versus no vaccine debate. But one country is now putting things in place where if you want to travel at all, you will have to be vaccinated. We're talking planes, trains, and cruise ships. I'm going to tell you all about that and which country, but first let me invite you to subscribe. If you like staying up to date with everything that's going on in cruising, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. That way you don't miss out on any of these episodes. It doesn't cost anything, really helps out the channel. Thanks in advance. All right, can you guess the country? Oh, Canada. A vaccine's required to travel. Yeah, Canada putting policy in place that by the fall, if you want to fly commercially in Canada, if you want to take a train in Canada, if you want to cruise in Canada, you will have to be fully vaccinated. Now, certainly Canada is different than the United States. They're currently doing better with their vaccination program. More people in Canada willing to get vaccinated. So it begs the question, will these kind of travel requirements come to the U.S.? I don't think so, right? So here in the U.S., we're very diverse, right? You have 50 states, culturally diverse. It's the melting pot. It's where everybody immigrated to. And so you've got a lot of different philosophies. And while there'll be some states in the U.S. that you might see vaccine requirements for things like travel or even going to a restaurant, there'll be other states where there will be no vaccine requirement for anything. I would be shocked. I would be shocked if we ever got to a place where it said only vaccinated people can fly on airplanes. But the cruise lines themselves may come up and say, we're only going to cruise with vaccinated passengers. As private businesses, that would fit inside the American free market model, business self-determinant for their own gain of profit. That could happen, but I don't think the federal government's ever going to say, look, this form of transportation, you have to be vaccinated. I think that will happen on a local or a private business level. But yeah, interesting. So Canada, and again, I don't know what the vaccine hesitancy is like in Canada. I think it's more been of a supply kind of thing in Canada, but yeah, wild times. And now let me hit you with some super duper cool positive news. The NCL Prima, the hot new sexy cruise ship coming out next for Norwegian Cruise Line. Well, she done been floated out. Do you guys know about the float out process? When they build a cruise ship, they build it dry. They construct it in a dry dock, and it's a dock that can be flooded. And so once they've built everything they need to build to make the ship seaworthy or floatable, I don't even want to say seaworthy, but where it can hold water, for example, then they float it out. And that's exactly what happened with the NCL Prima. She's been floated out of the dry dock for the first time, sporting some cool artwork by Italian graffiti artist nicknamed PETA. P-E-E-T-A. That's the nickname for Manuel de Rita. And yeah, looks pretty cool. I'm excited to cruise on the ship. Frank Del Rio. You know Frank Del Rio is a big personality, right? We've talked about him in his battles with Florida, with the Governor Ron DeSantis. A big personality, and he had a big hand in the design of the Prima. So I'm kind of looking forward to getting on Prima and seeing what that level of machismo, what kind of cruise ship that ended up making. So yeah, exciting. Good news. Prima floating out. She's supposed to sail 2022. All right, we've talked about a lot. Your turn to sound off. The question for the comments: when you see these increased cases on cruise ships, does it give you pause? Does it make you not want to cruise? How does it make you feel? Let's have that conversation. Thanks so much for checking out the show today. Please show your support by hitting the like button, or the next drink you have that has a straw in it. The straw is going to have a hole, but it's going to be above the liquid line, so you're just going to suck and suck. No liquid. You ever had that? That's the worst, especially if you can't get another straw. This is Tony with Lido Loca, and until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.